Welcome to the fourth week of a message series called All Out. In this series, we've been looking at how we're called to be a church that goes out, a church that is oriented not inward toward ourselves, but outward toward the world and the people around us. For the last 10 years, this is the kind of church we have been striving to become, a church that's welcoming and open, bold and different, a church that reaches out to the world and the people around us through a modern approach that makes church relevant, engaging, and accessible. Along the way, we've found that as we've worked and struggled to make church matter to people out there, church has come to matter a lot more to all of us in here. So now we're looking at how being sent out is about more than just how we worship in here. Being sent out is also about more than just sharing our faith with people. It's about serving and loving people and making the world a better place out there in our everyday lives and in the wider community. It's about bringing hope and healing to the people, neighborhoods, and world around us, outside the walls of this church. But what does that look like exactly in this community, in the communities you live and work in and raise your families in? Well, to be honest, I don't have a blueprint for what it looks like. I think it's the question that we need to be asking and answering together. So we're continuing with this series this week, but before we jump in, I want to follow up on some exciting news that I shared at the end of Mass last Sunday. This week, we began construction on building out a cafe space at New Roads. This is the space adjacent to and behind the restrooms, the space behind this door here. Previously, this space was a collection of mostly unused and extremely outdated offices and meeting spaces. But now, walls are being knocked down to make one larger gathering space, a cafe space. You might be wondering, why do we need a cafe space anyway? How will we use that space? And what's the purpose? Great questions. Maybe the most obvious use for a cafe is to allow for greater connection, conversation, and community. I sense such a growing hunger for this in our community right now, and I think it's led by the Spirit. We need a place outside of the worship space where people can linger longer, have informal conversations, make connections, share life, take a next step, meet, visit, ask questions, and just hang out. We don't want this cafe to be a boring room with a bunch of tables and chairs like a cafeteria or airport coffee shop. We want to build a space that's inviting and warm, open and modern. Not just a place where people can hang out, but a place people actually want to hang out. Another use for our cafe space is for families and babies and young children. The cafe will have flexible seating and space with multiple TV monitors showing our live stream so that kids are free to move around while parents can still be part of what's happening at Mass. Of course, we'll also use this cafe space for all sorts of smaller group meetings during the week and throughout the year. And beyond all that, I'm excited to think about the ways that we want to steward this space as a resource to our wider community, related to how we want to go all out and serve the needs of our wider community. Here are some photos of the floor plan of the space. As you can see, it'll be one space, but serve sort of multiple purposes. I realize you can't really see the detail here on the screen, so we've put this photo and others on our website to give you a better sense of what's planned. Construction will be ongoing during the summer, and we plan to start using it in the fall. How is this cafe going to happen? Well, I'm so grateful that a few parishioners have stepped up with a significant financial commitment to get this project started. But we will need everyone's participation to make the full vision for our cafe a reality. Beyond knocking down walls, we have significant expenses: new flooring, electrical, and plumbing, as well as appropriate furniture for this space. We also have significant costs to cover when it comes to providing quality coffee service. People still talk about how bad the coffee was when we used to have coffee in the hall after Mass way back in the day. There are some things that even Jesus wouldn't bother to resurrect. And these coffee urns, they are dead and they are not coming back to life. And of course, we'll need to purchase and install the necessary tech equipment to show our live stream in this space. To be very clear, this is a financial stretch for our community. As you may know, every fall we have an annual Stewardship Sunday when we ask everyone to let us know what their intended financial contribution to our church will be over the year. This helps us budget and plan for our operating expenses. While there is a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and many positive things happening in our church, we are still struggling to make ends meet on our operating budget. In fact, we're projecting a deficit of over $100,000 for our next fiscal year. But that's a discussion for another day. The people who have stepped up to get us started on this cafe project know how important it is for our mission and for our future. So their gift is separate from our operating budget. Together, we're taking a leap of faith. The folks who have stepped up to get us started also want to inspire others to give generously to support this effort. And so they have offered to match every gift others make to this project. Every single gift of $500, $5,000, or even a gift of up to $25,000 will be matched. How amazing is that? We're praying that our community will respond to this opportunity and help us make this significant step forward. I invite you to consider your gift thoughtfully over the next few days and make a commitment to give over the next few weeks, either online or in person. To be clear, this is a one-time commitment to support this specific project. We have a cafe card for you to take home today and to bring back next week, or you can simply make your gift online. Oh, and building out a cafe space also means building out a cafe ministry. If you're interested in helping us create, launch, and staff this new ministry, we'd love to hear from you. There's a place to indicate that on the card as well. Thank you for your support of this project. I believe not having a space for our community to gather and connect has been holding us back from what God wants to do. And I'm so excited to see what God does as we take this next step or leap of faith together. Moving into today's message, I want to stick with this topic of building community and connection through sharing food or a meal with others. Sharing meals with others was a central strategy that Jesus used in reaching out to others. Jesus regularly spent time in fellowship with friends over meals. Many of his most important teachings were delivered over meals. In fact, he spent so much time at dinner parties that the religious leaders unfairly accused him of being a glutton and a drunkard. And these same leaders were not only astonished at how much time Jesus spent at meals, but by who he dined with. They were outraged that he would eat with tax collectors and sinners. This was a source of scandal to the religious people. But Jesus cared more about reaching the irreligious people than he did about religious rule keeping. For example, one time Jesus met a guy named Zacchaeus, who was the most despised man in town, a tax collector for the Roman government who got rich by skimming from the taxes. Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus' house for dinner. Also, after calling the corrupt tax collector Matthew to follow him, Jesus attends a dinner party hosted for him by Matthew and his friends. This is a pattern seen over and over again in the Gospels. Jesus consistently used meals as a way to connect with those closest to him, but also as a way to reach out to people he didn't know well yet, people he seemed to share very little in common with. Sharing a meal is powerful on so many levels. It has a way of leveling the playing field and drawing out what is most shared among us. We're all human. We all have to eat. And yet we know that there is so much more to a meal than food. There's a spiritual and social dimension to it as well. Sharing a meal is powerful because it opens us up to conversation, relationship, connection, and transformation. This is why a meal is at the very heart of our worship every Sunday. Today we celebrate the feast of the body and blood of Christ, sometimes called Corpus Christi. This feast day focuses on the Eucharist as a meal, a feast. It reminds us that when we receive the Eucharist, we receive Christ. He is fully present in the bread and wine that become his body and blood. Now, I want to acknowledge that this is a central mystery of our Catholic faith, and that it's okay if you have questions or you aren't sure what you believe or what it means. We can all take a step from wherever we are with this. I'm a priest, and I'm still taking steps. When it comes to eating and drinking, two facts are clear. Eating and drinking are absolutely necessary for life. And two, what we eat becomes a part of us. It literally becomes our flesh and blood. Although we don't usually think about it much, the most intimate connection we have in life is with what we eat. Jesus reveals his desire for this intimate connection with us by comparing reception of himself to food. He expresses this connection by saying, I remain in you. Astoundingly, he adds, and you remain in me. We call this communion. And our communion is not just with Jesus, but also with all those around us. This is what makes us the living body of Christ. When we gather for worship, for Mass, we aren't sharing a meal with Jesus. Jesus is the meal, and he nourishes us so that we will do what he did, go out to bring hope and healing to a hurting world. The bottom line is that meals of all kinds are powerful tools to experience communion and connection with God and with those around us. So, my challenge to you this week, set a date on your calendar and a goal that by the end of the summer, you are going to do something to show love for people outside the walls of this church through food. No kidding, through food. Maybe that means for you inviting a few people over for dinner that you haven't previously invited or not invited in a long time. Maybe you can host a barbecue and include not just people you know, but people you're just getting to know. Maybe it's sending dinner to someone who's facing some special challenges or just baking a batch of cookies for them. Maybe doing that doesn't seem like it's related to our Sunday worship or to your faith. Let me just tell you, it is. The word mass comes from the Latin word missio, which means sent. In a way, that's really the whole purpose of Mass. It's like if a group of people were going out on a big service or mission trip, and they came together for prayer and a blessing before they left. That's exactly what Mass is. We're all on a big mission trip. It's called life. And every week we get to gather as a community to experience the nourishment that we need. That's the Eucharist, the gift of God's grace in the form of Jesus' body and blood. Jesus uses a meal to build the church, to reconcile and renew the whole world. When we receive the Eucharist, we are formed into a community, unified for a purpose. We receive Jesus so that we become like Jesus, to share the good news of God's love out in the world.